How you guys doing? OFFAIAH here. This video is for any producer out there that makes dance music, that wants to make music to play in a live scenario like a nightclub, or maybe a demo to play to a label or something like that. And they want to make sure their levels are consistent. And I'm talking about the low end of the mix here, the bass end of the mix. So this isn't a tutorial how to make a polished master you'd want to release commercially, but more of a way to get you at least 90% of the way there. So this is going to use a plugin called Spectrum in Ableton Live, and I'm going to show you how to get your levels nice and consistent. The most important thing is how it sounds at the end of the day. So you can follow these visual cues, but how it sounds is obviously the most important thing here. So the problem I used to have back in the day when making dance music was getting the low end or the bass end of my mixes consistent. So I'd finish making a record in the studio and then play it in the club or play it in the car. Sometimes the bass would be too loud, sometimes too quiet, but it just wasn't consistent. So following this method, I found that I can get a way more consistent low end or bass end of my mix. So I'm going to show you that right now. So you're going to need four things. Firstly, Ableton Live, which is what I'm using here today. And then two plugins. One is called Limiter, and the second one is called Spectrum. And then the last thing you're going to want is a reference track. So I have my reference track here at the top here. Underneath that, I have my original track. So this is a track I'm going to try and get to a good consistent level. So what I've done here, I split my track into 4 stems. So you're going to want to do at least 3. I've done 4. So you're going to want to separate the kick, which is the first one here, then the bass, which is the second one here, and then I separated the percussion and a vocal. So you're going to want at least 3, maybe 4, or as many as you want, but definitely separate the kick and the bass from the rest of the track. So let's get started. So let me play you the reference track so you can hear that.
You know what I'm saying? Y'all see,
And then we can start to load in our plugins. So what we're going to do is firstly group the stems together. So I'm going to select them all and then press Command and G. So that will give me a group. And then I'm going to slide my plugins into the group here. So the first one is Limiter. And the second one is Spectrum. So what you can do to save time in the future, to save you dragging these one by one, you can drag in an audio effects rack here and then add your plugins into the rack. Then you can save the rack. I'll save it rack 007. And then you can simply drag in that saved rack and it'll give you the plugins that you've saved into that rack. So it'll just save you some time in the future. So let me delete that. So what we want to do here first, we're going to adjust some parameters inside Spectrum. So firstly, turn off auto by pressing auto, and then take it from 0 to -3. And then this one we want to around -18. So that will focus in on the area that we want. And to magnify this, you can press this little triangle here and it will bring it up on the screen here. So the first thing we're going to do is solo the kick drum. Solo that there. And let's see how that sounds. So you can see here, the level is peaking around -8.23 decibels. And you can see the information down in the lower left-hand side here. And we want to bring this down to around -12 decibels. So we do that by bringing down the level of the track that the kick sits on. So let's do that. But as we lower the level, you can see the level here going lower. So that's perfect. We want it just on that -12 dB mark. And we'll do the same for the bass. So I'm just going to bring that down. So that's perfect. That's just about riding the -12 dB mark. Doesn't have to be exact, but you want it more or less on that line. Then we can unsolo that. We're going to bring down the remainder of the track. In my case, it's the percussion and the vocal. We're going to bring that down to -infinity, and we're going to press play. Now we're going to push up the gain of the limiter until this is peaking at around -6 decibels. So let's push this up. Okay, so now we're going to bring up the remainder of the track, the percussion and the vocal. So this is where the reference track comes in. So what I'm going to do is reference the clap and the hats. So in particular, the claps. I want the claps to be just around the same kind of level as my reference track. So let me solo the reference track. And then we'll take that off and we'll start to bring in our percussion. Our reference track, our track,
You know what I'm saying? Hey, y'all see, oh.
That was about right. Now we can start to bring in the vocal. Reference track, our track. That sounds good to me. So one last thing you can do is you can increase the level of the kick if you want your track to be slightly more kick heavy. And the limit I go to is around -4 dB. So let me show you that right now. So let me solo the kick. I'm going to push this up to -4. So increase the level of the track here. And just a bit more. -3.95. That will do for now. So let's see how that sounds. So you can go as high as that. Typically, for this track anyway, I'm going to bring this down. So to me, that sounds about right. So that is how I master a track before I play out in a live scenario. So I hope you found that useful. If you have any questions that you want me to answer in a future tutorial, please leave them down in the comments below, and I'll see you next time.